All right. Well, here we go. Thank you so much for joining us today on another great book creator webinar. It is my absolute pleasure to have you with us today. As you can see, there are quite a few guests joining me today, and we're going to get to introductions just here in a second. But before we do that, I want to let you know if you are watching the recording, all the links to the resources today are down in the description. So don't worry, everything is right there if you're watching live. Thank you so much for joining us. You can find all of the resources we'll be posting in the chat, as well as tomorrow, you'll get a link to the recording and all the resources. So don't fret, you can sit back, relax, and listen to the show. That said, also, we love your interaction. So right now, I can see there's so many people in the chat already chiming in. There are folks chiming in from all over the world. Hi, Amy in Texas. Sarah's in Chicago. We've got um, Jennifer and PA, love it to see some friendly names in there. So you can use the chat to interact with the panelists, ask questions. If something pops up, they'll jump in there and they can either answer it there in the chat or live. And we're also using the Q&A feature. So feel free to jump in there and ask your questions. Okay, that's all of the housekeeping out of the way. Very excited to be inviting so many people on. But I'm going to start with our book creator ambassador. So, gosh, Chris, I don't even remember. It was like 5 months ago. You reached out and you're like, I had the best summer ever in the whole wide world. You have to hear this story. And here we are 6 months later, and we're on a webinar. So, Carissa, thank you so much for being here. I would love it if you would introduce yourself, a little bit about you, and then if you could introduce the guests that you've brought here today, that'd be wonderful.
Sure. Thank you so much for having us today. I've been really looking forward to this. My name is Carissa Schwanekamp. I'm the Instructional Technology Integration Specialist for our district here in Plainfield, Indiana. So I work with educators K-12. And then along the way, I have met my awesome friends that are on the panel. Jen Epstein-Rudnick, she is a park ranger from the National Mall, National Park Service in Washington, D.C. Robin Brown is an amazing educator from Atlanta, Georgia. And then John Hochstetler actually is in Indiana too. He's just a little bit north of me in Hamilton County. So I am just so excited to have everyone here today and have so many voices to chime in on how amazing it is really when we unlock nature's classroom. So let's get started. Share my screen. Okay, so it shouldn't shock anyone that we took our presentation today and put it into Book Creator. So, and it really does so much to make a presentation come to life. So I totally suggest the next time you are putting together a presentation, you can make it that much more engaging by putting some little things here and there in from Book Creator. So let's go ahead and get started. And so Jen, we need to start with the story of how we met. It is one of my favorite stories. And then we can get into kind of our relationship and how it has grown and how we connect students through virtual experiences. And then also kind of how STEAM in the Park and Expeditions in Education had an impact on all of our lives and how educators can get involved. So Jen, do you want to start kind of with our story and we'll go kind of one slide at a time, adding to some things that we've done over the years?
Sure. Thank you for having me, book creator, and Carissa. Excited to be here. As you heard, I'm a education specialist. I work at the National Mall in Washington, D.C., and it's my job to connect with students and teachers all around the country, and I guess I could say today around the world. This is very exciting. And I met Daisha, who we in STEAM in the Park know as the founder of this amazing Expeditions in Education. And she came in and did some interviews with me that you can find on her Expeditions website, visiting some of the memorials around the mall. And when we were talking once on one of their visits to Washington, she and her husband were saying it would be really great to bring teachers together and be able to immerse themselves in a park story and be able to bring things back to their classrooms. And so we had planned to do this in Washington, D.C. in 2020, and the world changed very suddenly in 2020, and we were not able to bring people to D.C. But Daisha persevered, and in 2021, right, brought everybody who was interested in this idea to Acadia National Park, and that's where I met Carissa that summer.
Yes, and so you can kind of see in the pictures. So this spans our first meeting on the left to now I've had some in-person meetings with Jen as I've traveled to DC on the 8th grade field trip, and there's a group of students with her there. So we came back from meeting and thought, wow, we really need to get students involved. And we can't take our students from Indiana to Washington, DC easily, but we can meet virtually. And so we did start with some virtual programming together. So let's talk about this virtual program with Edith Lee Payne honoring Martin Luther King Jr. and the March on Washington, because this was so special. I remember being in my classroom. Now, this is like 2021, but I remember being in my classroom and just having goosebumps, thinking,
Yeah.
I could not have done this on my own without connecting students in this way. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure. That picture on the right there with the girl holding the banner from the March on Washington is a picture that we've all used a lot in our programming, particularly after the opening of the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial in 2011 in DC. We used that picture in our brochure. And so when that happened, Edith contacted us. She's from Detroit, still an activist, was counting election results when I spoke with her a few weeks ago. And she loves to share her story. This photograph was taken of her at the March on Washington. It was her 12th birthday. And she didn't find out until years and years later that that picture had been taken of her. And so she loves to share her story about how being at that historic event on the mall greatly impacted her life and took her where she ended up, being an activist. And so she loves to talk to students, and we were able to have her join one of our programs. One of our partners, the Trust for the National Mall, would run a lot of our Zooms. We actually do monthly programs still to this day, and I'll throw my email in the chat if anybody wants to reach out. I'm happy to share information with you about it. And yeah, we have a lot of virtual options, and this was a really powerful story because Edith got on the Zoom with us, and students could ask questions. And yeah, it was really powerful hearing her hearing her voice talk about her experiences.
Yes. And how incredible is it that she didn't even know her picture was taken that day? And it would be such an
I know,
iconic
it was
picture to
amazing.
represent the March on Washington. And then since meeting Jen, I have figured out, hey, you just need to ask park rangers to meet with you because they will always say yes. They are always looking for ways to spread the word about their parks and to engage teachers and students into learning more about their parks and parks they may visit someday, but parks they may never visit, but still get to have that virtual experience. So we've had so many experiences with these are just a few pictures, some of them with Jen, some of them with other park rangers. But the willingness to participate even beyond a recorded, virtual visit that you're watching, but being able to come live with the students. Every park ranger that I ask to send junior park ranger badges back to my students, they've all sent the badges back. In fact, I had a 4th grade boy come in one day and he had on what looked like a Girl Scout vest, something that Girl Scouts would wear. And I said, "What is that?" And he said, "My mom made this for me. It's for all of my badges I'm going to earn this year." And I thought, incredible. And he said, "Now I'm going to go to some of the places I don't have badges and I'm going to earn those badges." And so these kids don't know about this if we don't share it with them. And so there have just been some really incredible opportunities over the years. I really want to talk about this virtual visit as well, because we're coming up on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and obviously we don't just celebrate him and the works that he did and what he tried to do for our nation on just that day, but I loved this visit so much. And really, Jen put this together with a park ranger friend from the MLK Junior National Historical Park in Georgia. And it was one of those things. I'm in the back of the room teary eyed because I can't believe what my students are learning. So, Jen, let's talk for a second about this experience.
Yeah, I haven't done one of these recently. We did these a lot during the pandemic when things weren't as open, and this was a way that we can connect with students when a lot of us were home or a lot of us, things weren't as open. But yes, I met Ranger Marty at Martin Luther King site in Atlanta, and we combined our efforts and we did kind of a joint program. You pretty well described it here. He started by giving a tour of the neighborhood that Dr. King is from in Atlanta. We jumped up to the Lincoln Memorial where the I Have a Dream speech happened, talk about King's visits to Washington and some of the speeches he gave, most famously the I Have a Dream speech. And then we went back and looked around the neighborhood some more, saw the Ebenezer Baptist Church. I believe we showed where Dr. King's grave is. And then we came back and talked about the legacy of the Dr. King Memorial in DC. So a really cool back and forth between two different parks. I mean, who doesn't love two for the price of one, right? It's a great deal.
It was an incredible experience and learning for the students, obviously, but I love the fact that educators are growing when they're participating in these adventures because I know students think we know everything, but we don't know everything. And so when we get to learn alongside them and show them, wow, I didn't know anything about that. I learned that in the same second that you learned that. And I think something else to point out is we're hearing stories, right? We're on a webinar with Book Creator. It's all about putting your three creative thoughts down on paper. And here we are sharing stories and these stories that will impact students forever. These kids will always remember this. I will always remember this day. I remember this virtual visit with you, Jen, like it was yesterday.
Well, and we've heard for so long that history is boring because it's all about dates and memorizing things like that. But if we put it in the context of stories, then they remember those things and they remember the people and they remember, kind of the story that way much more than they'll ever remember. Oh, it was on this date at this time. And so, yeah, much more
100%. Yes, I love that. So let's talk for a minute about the Every Kid Outdoors program. So you got me hooked in 2021. We got back from Acadia. I had never heard of this before, and I had been teaching fourth grade forever at the time. So I feel bad, like I need to retroactively go back and find passes for all of those students that are now grown adults. But Every Kid Outdoors, tell us a little bit more about this program and how it's special for fourth graders.
Yeah, so I won't make you feel bad and tell you it started in 2016, which was our 100th anniversary. The National Park Service turned 100. And at that time, the administration thought it would be something really special that they could do to make a push. As I tell the kids when I present these passes to them, the idea that there's lots of adults who like their parks and wanna help protect them, but we need to get that next generation excited. So they chose fourth grade. They say they're at the perfect age to go out and explore and are excited to learn new things. And usually they're learning about things in their local area. It's usually when you do your state's history, in some cases anyway, not where I am, but in some cases. And in fourth grade, we have this pass available so that fourth graders and their families can go visit the national parks that have an entrance fee. So when you think of like the big parks where you have to pay to go in, the fourth grader takes their card and the whole family gets in without having to pay. So it really empowers the student to be the one who's got the card. I tell them all the time, your parents can't take this card and go use it without you. You have to be there, which means that they can't leave you home. You have to take this, you get to take the card with you. It has your name on the back of it. It's a really big deal. And so, yeah, this is a cool deal. I mean, I turn it into a math problem too. I ask the kids if a park costs $30 and you go 5 times, it's like, whoa, $150. That's how much money I saved. I mean, that puts it in perspective. So, yeah, fourth graders from September 1st to August 31st, they get these passes. And I, in the DC area, try and get out because I feel like there are a lot of kids who maybe aren't going to get them if I don't help hand them out. The park I work at does not charge an entrance fee, but it's an opportunity to get these passes out. If you're in an area where you maybe don't have a park, you can go online to the everykidoutdoors.gov website and print out a pass for your students or for your children.
I love that so much. So wherever you see the arrow, that's where I have some things linked. So on that pass right there, if you go to click this later and look at the show notes, you'll be able to get to the Every Kid Outdoor site. And as an educator, you'll be able to do just what Park Ranger Jen said, get your class numbers put in and then get the passes printed for them. And I have to give a huge shout out to Jen. So she helped me when I was in the classroom teaching fourth graders and we got my kids certified. But then for the past 2 years, now that I'm working at the district level, every single fourth grader for the past 2 years, so about 1,000 kids have met with Jen on a Google Meet and gone through the process to learn more about the parks and received their park pass. So for 2 years in a row, and I hope we keep doing it forever because it's so amazing. I have fourth graders coming up to me still telling me, Mrs. Schwanenkamp, this is where we're going over Christmas break. This is where we're going over spring break. This is where I went on fall break. And I think that, like you said, arming the kids with the pass is pretty amazing. And they are at an age to start influencing. So I love that so much. And then just a little bit more information here from the Every Kid Outdoors program. We spoke to one of their representatives who was so sad she couldn't be here today, but she shared this brochure. And then I've also linked in across the top where Every Kid Outdoors is underlined. There's a slideshow. So if you want more information or you want to pass this on to a colleague or share it with students, it's great information. It talks about how the program was started, how it continues to be funded, what exactly it entails, where the students can go with their pass. Just a lot of really amazing information. And just as we know, it's great to get kids outdoors. What does it do for us? I mean, we know how we feel when we step outside, whether we are in beautiful green spaces or we're just in our backyard or we're just taking a walk down the road. I mean, the decrease in our anxiety levels, how we feel so much better as far as stress goes, improving our thinking, reasoning, and other mental abilities. I read something recently that said most of our creative thoughts happen when we are engaged with something outdoors. And I think that I try to think of when I've been the most creative, and it really is when I've been outside experiencing maybe just some peaceful time in nature. And I love this quote, you should sit in nature for 20 minutes a day unless you're busy, then you should sit for an hour. So it really does show us there's no excuse. We need to get outside. We need that time, even if it is just a quick breath of fresh air. And these are just a few pictures from over the course of the last several years of getting students outside. I got this little guy here in the middle who's dressed up as a junior park ranger. We had our meeting with Jen that day. He came dressed up, and then we were doing a nature like journaling hike outside. So they've got their notebooks. And just we went on the playground, you guys. We couldn't take them to a national park. We couldn't take them to a state park. We couldn't take them to a local park. So we were exploring our playground. So really just work with what you have. You would be shocked. We were out by the fence. We saw ladybugs. We saw birds. We just stopped to notice. And that's what this is all about, being able to slow down long enough to notice what's happening around you. One other thing that I was inspired to do based on my time with Jen and my time with Expeditions in Education and STEAM in the Park was start a STEM club. We call it the STEAM Dream Team, where we're trying to solve the world's problems, but it's just a club for fourth and fifth graders after school. It's free. They can join us. We rotate working with technology and working with park rangers. Just last week or 2 weeks ago, we met with a park ranger from Acadia National Park, and she taught the kids about green crabs and how they're invasive and what they're trying to do to help control the population. But guess what? She only had like 2 weeks notice. I was scrambling, and she's like, absolutely, I'll meet with you. I would love to. And we're talking, I mean, this was probably beyond her workday. I mean, it was 4:30 to 5:30. She got right on the Google Meet, shared some amazing things with the kids. Some were fourth graders that had participated in the Every Kid Outdoors kickoff with Jen, but some were kids that were fifth graders or new fourth graders, and they asked the best questions. And then they designed prototypes afterwards for a humane trap. You can kind of see down below on the right-hand side for a humane trap that would help capture the green crabs and release them into another location that would be less detrimental to the other creatures that like to call Acadia their home. And then they sent junior park ranger badges. So to watch these kids do this, literally, like, we're going to get a badge for this. Then, I'm hearing from their parents. We went home and told our parents about it, and now we're considering going to see the green crabs in Maine. So I just think if my kid came home and wanted to just, instead of go to the beach like we do every single year, but wanted to go on a new adventure where they could see something they learned about, I think that's pretty incredible. And then, Jen, I know this is our favorite story ever. We're on a call with Book Creator. We have to tell this story. This is the best story of all time. And I will never forget this story. And in 20 plus years, this has to be my favorite story ever. So Jen and I met We get back 2021. She does the kickoff with the national parks with my kids. We do the Every Kid Outdoors, and she leaves them with a challenge at the end. She talks to them in 2021 about the crisis with the cherry blossom trees, and she talks to them about the tidal basin. And mind you, I don't know about any of this. I know what cherry blossom trees are and I know what the tidal basin is, but I don't know the impact of what's happening. And she talks to them about how they're losing the cherry blossom trees and only 4% of the population still remains. And she's rattling off all of these facts I had no idea about. So she kind of gives them a challenge. I'm thinking, we're doing this meet with her and then we're going to move on to whatever's next in our day. We get off the call with Jen and they're like, Mrs. Schwanenkamp, what are we going to do about this? This is a crisis. I'm like, well, what do you want to do about it? And I will say the best things we can ever do in education are the things that are unexpected, the things we can't even imagine. We think we're planning one lesson and we think we're going to move on. And this just took off. So we got back in touch with Park Ranger Jen. We needed more information. They started researching. They started building prototypes. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to tell Jen, it's been about 6 weeks. We're wrapping this up. They built their prototypes. Maybe she wants to jump on and see their prototypes, or I'll send her a Google Slides project and she can give some feedback back. No, Jen is so great that she said, oh no, that's not going to be enough. I'm going to get engineers on this call. I'm going to get the superintendent of the National Mall. I'm going to get other park rangers on that specialize in education. And we are going to be an audience for these students. And we're going to ask them some probing questions about their models and designs, because this is a problem we're really trying to solve. So I get off the call with her and I break the news to the class and they're like, what? This is huge. I'm like, it's going to be a Zoom call. And of course, my boys right away are like, oh, that's fine. We'll wear just ball shorts. They can't see us from the waist down. It'll be fine. We'll dress up from the waist up. So are they not the true Zoom kids from COVID? So we get all pumped up. We get fired up. They come dressed up for school that day. And again, I'm just standing in awe in my classroom because one group and individuals are presenting, and the panelists online, they're asking amazing questions and they're making my kids think, and just unexpected joy. I had no idea where this would go. And guess what? Every standard I needed to teach in 4th grade, I met through this project because it was real and they were so invested. They didn't want to let Jen down. They didn't want to let the national park down, and they didn't want to let each other down. So fast forward, this is the fall semester in 2021. So we're coming into 2022, and this little boy in this picture in the middle, Caleb, comes up to me and says, and he's pretty quiet, I'm going to visit the National Mall over spring break. And I said, oh, kids sometimes want to do something, but they're not really doing it. I'm like, oh, are you sure? He's like, you can call my mom and ask my mom about it. So I talked to his mom and she said, absolutely. He has not stopped talking about Park Ranger Jen, the National Mall, the cherry blossom trees, and the tidal basin, and he needs to see it with his own eyes. So they went over spring break, hooked up with Park Ranger Jen. I'm sure she had all kinds of special things to talk to him and his family about. And the best part was at the end, this kid who's quiet whispered to her that I want to be a park ranger like you someday. I know. And so I'm like, Jen, I'm balling over here. But I think this story is the power behind, we never know what we're going to do in class, what lesson we're going to teach that we think is just another lesson, and it's going to completely change the trajectory for some of these kids. And so even if it's one kid that's changed by something that we do, this is my favorite story ever because it really did bring that completely to light. So Jen, would you add anything to that story? I love it. I've told this story a million times.
Well, I was that one kid once because I got into this whole field because of my 5th grade teacher, who I still keep in touch with, and she knows what an influence she's been on my life. And I just feel like if I could be that one person, maybe, Caleb will remember me someday. And when he puts on his uniform and his hat, I remember most about this. And yeah, it was such an incredible experience to meet actually 2 of your students over the course of the years. But I remember the call with the cherry blossoms because I was on my phone And I was out at the tidal basin in the middle of cherry blossoms. If anybody's been to Washington during cherry blossom season, it can be a zoo, and usually is. And I was out I'm literally using my phone just to be like, hey kids, look at the flowers. Isn't this pretty? And it was wild. And there was a woman in a paddle boat, and she's paddle boating up to me, asking me questions. I'm like, do you see I'm talking to people here? But you asked a question, or one of your students asked a question about the rock at the Jefferson Memorial and where it came from. And that got us thinking about rock. And I just want to share, especially because Robin's on with us, that this is where the idea came from for this program we did virtually called Lincoln Rocks. One of the neat facts of the Lincoln is that it's really it was built to really represent the unity of the country, that President Lincoln fought to reunite the country. And so they used rock from 6 different states to complete the Lincoln Memorial, so they could say when it was finished, it represented the nation reunited. Half the rock came from the north, half the rock came from the south, and so it was this idea that came to me when I was on the tidal basin, and Chris is asking me about rocks, and where's the Indiana rock? And it's actually the columns in the Lincoln Memorial, and I'm standing, I think, with Caleb right by some columns there, and I think I showed him the Indiana rock when he came to visit, which was really fun. But it got me thinking about what if I could find a school in each of the different states and have them look up, and find out about the rock that came from their state, and then they all share with each other, so that students from, Georgia got to benefit from Robin's class making this really fun video about where the Lincoln, the rock came from for the Lincoln statue, and then Carissa's Lincoln obsessed class and music teacher performed for us on recorders. It was amazing. And we had all the different states represented on one Zoom. It was so cool. And it's when you find creative people to work with and people who are willing to take the chance on things, you get some really fun results. And that was one of my favorite experiences that we've had from partnering up on things like this. So yes, this was a particularly teary moment, though, getting to meet these boys when they came to visit, and that they wanted to come visit. It was just amazing.
Yeah, so on the right, he visited the next year after we had done some work with Jen again, and he went to visit. He painted this beautiful picture. We were doing a Paint the Parks project, and he painted it of the Washington Monument with cherry blossom trees in the front, and said, "I dedicate this to Park Ranger Jen." And it was just like, oh my gosh, just amazing. Just totally amazing. So the next couple of slides are some resources to get started. So at the end, you will get my contact information and Jen's contact information, and you'll be able to reach out to anyone on the panel if you too want to get started with something like this in your school, community, or classroom. But the next couple of slides are some resources for you as you get started. So we've talked a lot about Expeditions in Education. So that's the nonprofit that has helped make a lot of this work possible. Jen works really closely with Daisha and Steve from Expeditions in Education, and is a great representative of what these park rangers do and what they can offer to us as educators. So when you have time, check out the site listed, expeditionsineducation.org. All of the virtual visits that have already been recorded are linked to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So it really is about how can we make our world, not just our state, not just our national park, but make our world a better place. And then all these materials are free. So everything is curated and ready to go and free. There's literacy connections, which again, we're talking books today. So we love those literacy connections. STEM challenges, there's so many things on this site for you to check out. And then this was just a little bit of an example about the visit I had with Jen, just some information to get you started if you're interested. It talks about our example with the tidal basin and how we walk through the design thinking process. And then this was the challenge that she goes by Dr. Drizzle with Expeditions in Education. This was the challenge that then she created for my students to move forward with trying to help with the cherry blossom trees. One more thing I want to share before we kick it to Robin and John and hear a little bit about the impact that STEAM in the Park and Expeditions in Education has had on them. I do want to share, I was able to share this story with Edutopia, and they published my article recently. So if you were to click at the top where it's underlined, you can read the article about this. And hopefully it's kind of a guide to get you started and walks you through the steps so that you can replicate this in your classroom. And another really cool thing about this, I don't know if in early 2024, you saw this in the news, but they are working towards, and Jen can speak more to this, but their plan for the cherry blossom trees and what they're going to do to preserve and maybe move trees and some of the things that they're going to do that my students were investigating in 2021. And so when I look through their plans and I read the articles now, I can hear those ideas that my students had kind of echoed throughout. And I think what was really important during this whole challenge for my students was for them to understand you don't have to be an adult to make a difference. You don't have to have a degree to make a difference. You don't have to be a scientist to care about our world. That kids sometimes can move the needle more than adults can because they're not stuck in their ways and they have flexible ideas and they're flexible thinkers. So I think that that was really powerful as well. Jen, anything I missed about the work that's happening with the Tidal Basin and cherry blossom
I was
trees?
just gonna say it's already begun. They're working to secure the seawall so that the trees won't be flooded and the roots won't be destroyed and all of that. So it is underway right now, and the goal is hopefully by 2026 that things will be moving along and near completion, I hope. I don't know for sure if everything's on target, but there's a lot of work going on already. I'll have to send you some photos of what is
Yes.
going on out there.
I would love to be totally in touch with what's going on with that. So Robin, I'm going to reach out to you first. So I've got a lot going on this slide, but I wanted to share some pictures. I wanted to share some links for our viewers. So and when we're finished talking, I can click on this so that the viewers can see the book creator book that we created as attendees for STEAM in the Park to really capture the stories of our time in the national parks this past summer. So this past summer, a lot of us visited some national parks through Expeditions in Education. This part of the programming is called STEAM in the Park. So we met up with educators in national parks around the country, and we were able to learn about the park and help the park with some of their education resources, and then just enjoy being in the park and learning the history and the culture behind it. And so we'll look at that book in a minute that a lot of the campers completed. If you are interested, after you hear us talking about this, if you were to click the Join Us icon that's moving around, it would take you to the interest form for 2025, where you could sign up to show your interest for participating in STEAM in the Park. And this is the teacher side. So Expeditions in Education has a lot of resources for teachers to use with students, but then the STEAM in the Park side is for you. It's for your renewal and refreshing your spirit as you get into the next school year. So Robin, tell maybe your favorite story from STEAM in the Park or how it's impacted you as an educator. I would love to hear from you.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. I am Robin Brown. I am a gifted liaison here in Atlanta, Georgia. And I got involved with STEAM in the Park, I think it's 3 years ago, which is when I met Jen. And we went to National Mall. And the reason that I picked National Mall is because I didn't want to do nature. I wanted to do hardscape, city, walk around, look at monuments. I did not want bugs. I did not want bushes, trees, any of that stuff. And so I went and I was pretty excited. Jen taught us a lot. I was outside the entire time, but had a great experience. And so from there, like Carissa said, we did Lincoln Rocks and so many different, I've had teachers connect with Ranger Jen and lots of things with National Mall. And then the next summer, I was like, ooh, I'll go to Hawaii. That seems really cool. Again, I was outside for an entire week. And I had frogs and birds and all kinds of things. And so after that experience, I also sent some other teachers that went to camps that summer. But after that experience, we decided to start an opt outside day here at our school. And in fact, our opt outside day is the Monday after Thanksgiving when we get back. Because I don't know if you guys know, but on instead of going out for Black Friday shopping, we want to go outside. So, you encourage everyone to opt outside that day. So we have what's called, our school is Oak Grove Elementary. So we have opt outside Oak Grove. And so we spend that day and we're supposed to be outside. And so since being involved with STEAM in the Park and expeditions in education, I have become a champion for being outside. So we talk about how nature contact mitigates stress and all the good activities and different things that you could do outside. I wrote down one of the things that we are going to actually try to use the Nature Journal this year through Book Creator, because we want our kids, one of the teachers here always says, we're creating memories for children. And I was like, well, what better way to create these memories and save these memories than with Book Creator? So we're going to be working on our memories on Monday. I also thank you for Carissa for reminding me about Every Kid Outdoors. So I think on that Monday, we're going to take our fourth graders and we'll go all the way through the Every Kid Outdoors and activities and whatever brings your gym. Look on your calendar, see what you got, and see what we could do for that day. But we do a lot of outdoor education here at our school. So it has made a huge impact on what we do here in Atlanta. And then actually since then, I've gone to a few other camps and been outside and learned to appreciate the outdoors.
Yes, we were in Hawaii together, correct?
We were in Hawaii.
Yeah. I mean, I had never met Robin. We were on that webinar, Lincoln Rocks, and then we met up in Hawaii together. So that was pretty awesome. That was for a camp a couple years ago. So always good to see you, Robin. Thank you so much for sharing. John, would you like to share a little bit?
Sure. Hi, everybody. And I'm really excited to be here and share some of my experiences with STEAM in the Park. I've been to two camps. My first one was Great Smoky Mountains. We stayed at the Tremont Institute, and then this past year I was out at Mount Rainier. Our school is located in central Indiana, right on the White River and next to a nature preserve. And so when I first got there, realized that our kids weren't outside learning in that incredible ecosystem. So been working hard to try and get them outside. And since then, we have piloted actually having our kids float down the White River doing their life science studies and going out and learning about invasive species on our property and seeing a real life problem and what are we going to do about it. One of the most impactful experiences I had was my first year at the Smoky Mountains. The staff, some of our national parks have institutes, and the Tremont Institute sits within the Great Smoky Mountains. And so we stayed at their location and they led a lot of our experiences. And one day they took us out on a little island and we did nature journaling. And I, like Carissa talked about, I like to be outside, but sometimes when I hike, I just put my head down and I go from point A to point B and I look at it as exercise, but I like being out there because I do get a lot of ideas while I'm out there. Nature journaling forced me to sit and stop and reflect and notice the little things. And I was just amazed at what I was discovering that's always been there, that I've just been walking past for most of my life. So I brought that experience back to our school and tried to encourage some teachers. I'm a teacher librarian, so I kind of act as support and resource for a lot of our teachers, and tried to encourage somebody to take me up on an offer to teach their class how to nature journal. So at the end of last year in May, when things were winding down, one of our sixth grade STEM teachers took me up on my offer, and I thought I was going to take her class out. Well, I ended up being her entire team. So it was 3 lessons, 70 students each time. But after each lesson, I would pull the teacher inside and say, look at the engagement. There's not a problem. They're all out there. They're all engaged. They're all asking incredible questions. And after the 3rd lesson, she said, I get it. I'm hooked. This is now going to be the foundation of my entire STEM class for the moving forward for this year. So it's been amazing to see what the kids are discovering, how they're going about it through John Muir Laws, who wrote a book on nature journaling, and I'll have the website with resources. And they've been watching his YouTube channel on how to draw and some of the lessons that he teaches. In fact, we reached out to him and we're going to be meeting with him in December, and he's going to Zoom with our students. They don't know it yet, but every day they come in and said, are we going to see John Muir Laws today to learn more from him? So we're trying to branch that out to, now that we have some success with one class, to see how many others we can hook to get outside and actually learn in our amazing environment.
I love all of that so much. And I learn from all of you every time we sit down and share. I'm like, yes, now that's an idea I'm taking back as well. I love it. I want to click on the book really quickly so that our audience can check out what we put together for Steam in the Park 2024. So we really did. That's a tribute to Daisha and Steve Jones, who head up the nonprofit and really make all of this possible for us. So what I did was just create a library for every camp. So if you teach a summer camp or you are spending time with adults in a PD experience and you really want to tell the story of a club or something else that's happening, this would be a great way to do it. It turned out awesome. We sent it out to every camp. And then we had some prompting to get people started with scariest moments. What was your first connection in nature? Something I overcame. I mean, look at that look on her face. She overcame riding a horse that may or may not have behaved while she was riding it. But just amazing to really detail your experience. And when you put things on paper, how much, kind of like John said, it sticks with you, whether it's drawing or whether it's writing. There is something pretty powerful about sharing the written word with others. We have some family camps through Steam in the Park, so you could bring your family with you. So this was a husband and wife duo that spent time together. And I just think that using Book Creator was such a powerful way to capture this story. So I wanted you to see a few pages, but once you have the slides and the link, you can check it out for yourself as well. Before we wrap up today, I have to shout out to Park Ranger Jen because she's an author. We're on Book Creator. We know students with creative ideas, they're all authors. If they get their ideas down, they're all authors. They don't have to wait to be published. Well, Jen is an author, and she wrote Search for the Signers, Visiting the Graves of the Signers of the Declaration of Independence. And so I think that that's pretty amazing. She's an amazing person, but she went ahead and also wrote a book about an adventure that she went on. So Jen, do you want to share just a little bit about your story? Because I think it's so special. And I know you're always like, you don't have to share about it, but yes, how many people actually know an author? I don't know very many. So Jen, share just a little bit about your book before we share our contact information.
Well, thank you. Yeah, this was like a history geek project. I spent a very long time, over 20 years probably, and I found myself one day in a cemetery in Boston and saw that there were 3 signers of the Declaration of Independence buried there. And I thought, I wonder how many graves I've been to. And so I went on a quest to try and find the rest of them. And there are 56 of them, and I got to all but one. And not to give away the ending, but what I found along the way was that just because there's a headstone and a grave there doesn't mean that the person is really buried there. And so it became a much more crazy adventure, like things I didn't expect I was going to find out, that people got moved along the way and sometimes misplaced, if I can say it like that. So yeah, it was a really pretty wild adventure. So if you're into history stuff and this isn't your scholarly work, this is more of a, hey, this is what happened as I went out and about and found these things, and how the facts don't quite make sense, so there must be a weird story here. It's kind of what I did.
That is amazing.
I know. I love that so much. And when I was in the classroom, I bought a copy of the book, and the kids just passed it around from one kid to the next because they couldn't wait to read the book that their park ranger friend had written. So they felt that much closer to the story. So I'll wrap it up and leave us with, let's just connect. I know this is a lot of information, but just start small. It's like anything. If you look at the big picture, it does seem like it's very overwhelming, but this was years in the making, right? We're talking this started in 2021. Well, my connection with Jen was doing this long before I came around in 2021, but we'll start small. Connect with us. If you scan the QR code, you can grab Park Ranger Jen's email, the National Mall NPS website, and my contact information is there. If you click the Book Creator logo, it's going to send you to Book Creator. You can reach out to David. He's dropped his email in the chat. We are here to help you and to learn from you, really, because you have great ideas as well. So reach out, because this is what we love to do.
That's right. That's right. And what better way to wrap things up, Carissa? Thank you so much. And thank you, John. And so sorry, Robin needed to run, and Park Ranger Jen. What an absolute pleasure it was to just hear your stories about going off to these PDs and then bringing back just that inspiration right to your students. And so many opportunities you shared to start small and think big and go for those easy wins, even if it just means going right outside of the classroom for a day. So really inspiring to hear your stories. I really appreciate you coming on and taking the time to share them with us. And as you heard, just reach out with anything. If you're watching the recording, all the information is down in the comments. But we are here for you. So thank you for taking the time, and we'll see you next time. All right, take care.